We will hear from Etai, Rita, Boaz, and Yael in just a few minutes. Their family members are innocent Israelis who have been taken hostage. The hostages include toddlers, grandparents, mothers. A month has passed since October 7th when they were abducted, and they are in the hands of those who we know have delighted in the slaughter of babies, the execution of parents in front of their children. Families here have loved ones ranging from an 83-year-old to a little boy who was 8 years old when he was taken hostage and had his 9th birthday in captivity. Many of those hostages were taken after watching their family members and loved ones murdered right in front of them. The cruelty of October 7th is unspeakable. We will not forget their stories, and we will not forget them till we bring them home. Now, the scenes we see on our television screens every day from Gaza are heart-wrenching, and a natural human reaction is to say, well, let's have a ceasefire. But after we listen to these families today, I think we will say that there cannot be a ceasefire until these hostages are released. There are those who equate the hostages to those in Israeli jails who have been convicted of terrorism. Keep in mind, these hostages have been convicted of nothing, have been charged with nothing, are guilty of nothing except being Jewish and being available for Hamas to kidnap. These are non-combatants in every sense. For the last 31 days, these families have had to endure immense suffering. They desperately await any information. Hamas has not published a list, even a partial list, of the hostages they hold. So the families don't know the status of their loved ones, whether they're injured, whether they're being abused or tortured, whether they're even alive. These families need answers, but the International Red Cross has not been allowed to visit the hostages or verify their status. So there is no international law on how to treat civilian hostages, because the law says you're not supposed to have civilian hostages. But international law for combatants who are legitimate prisoners of war requires that their names be revealed and that they be visited by the Red Cross, and of course none of that is happening. The voices who care about human rights must raise those voices loudly and demand that Hamas return these people to their families. We will be telling their stories, we will be remembering them, but we say together, bring them home now. So we'll hear from another of the family members, starting with Itai. Oh, yes. And but before that, my colleague Kathy Manning was here earlier, and now Dan Goldman.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. I thank so much these families for coming here and telling your stories. It's incredibly important to hear, because there is not enough attention right now on the fact that there are 240 hostages. There are babies, there are children, there are grandparents, there are Americans, they are from 33 countries. And the fact that there are people advocating for a ceasefire without discussing that the hostages must be returned makes no sense and runs completely counter to our American values, our democratic values, and the values that we export around the world. We need to be focused right now on bringing home the hostages who are being illegally held by Hamas. Hamas is doing many things that are sacrificing their own civilians and their own Palestinian civilians and citizens who are being used as human shields, who are being prevented from leaving. but they are also holding ours. They are holding our citizens, and it is unacceptable. And we will not stop fighting for these families and every family that is out there of those 240 or so hostages who must come home now. It has been 31 days. It is unacceptable, and the international community needs to put their focus squarely on these hostages, and they need to put the pressure on Hamas to return them home. I don't want to hear anything about a ceasefire until these hostages come home. And I thank the family so much for sharing their story. I wish it was not so important that you have to share your story, but it is. And we are really grateful that you are sharing your stories of heartbreak, of sleepless nights, of worrying, of wondering, of your mind racing as to what might be happening to your loved ones in Hamas's tunnels. And thank you again. It's not easy, but we're grateful that you're here. Thank you.
Dan, thank you very much. And yes, I want to commend these families because this is not an easy thing to do. These people did not ask to become public. They're worried, they're scared, they're sad, and yet they've come up with the gumption to stand in front of a podium and talk to the press. Itai, please tell us your story.
Hello, my name is Itai. My uncle and aunt have been living in Kibbutz Nir Oz for almost 6 decades. These are them, Avram and Ruti. Avram is my grandpa's younger brother. They had a small family of a son and a daughter. Their son used to live in Kibbutz Nir Oz as well in a different house, and he was murdered on October 7th. He was found shot to death in front of his house. His house was completely burned. On that weekend, their daughter came to visit the kibbutz for the Jewish holiday, for Simchat Torah, with her only son, their only grandson, Ohad, who, as mentioned before, was only 8 years old. The 4 of them found themselves in this horrible situation and this massive terror attack. The last thing we heard from them was from Ruti, my aunt. She was talking to her sister on the phone, and she was whispering that she can't talk because there are terrorists in the kibbutz. This was the last thing we heard from them. Later on, we found out that by 11 a.m. already, the 4 of them were geolocated in Gaza Strip. We don't know what their condition is, if they're alive or not, if they're getting medications, if they're getting any food. My uncle Avraham is not that healthy. He needs to use a cane to walk. All of them wear glasses. Avram needs to take medicine daily. The Red Cross isn't helping. We don't know, again, what their condition is. Ohad had a birthday 2 weeks ago, on October 23rd. He turned 9. He's a smart, sweet boy who plays soccer and tennis and is very lovable, and he shouldn't spend his 9th birthday in captivity. He should not be in captivity at all. No kid should and no civilian should. They're all innocent civilians. Among the 241 hostages, there are over 30 kids. The youngest of them is only 10 months old. And again, we do not know the condition of any of them. Releasing them should be the top priority of the entire world. It should be the number one thing that everyone discusses. Anyone who believes in human rights, anyone who advocates for human rights, for humanity, for justice, should solve this issue. This is why we're here, and this is what we're calling the entire world to do, to bring them back home, and to bring them back home now. Thank you.
I want to point out that those who want a ceasefire need to understand that as long as the hostages are held, no democratic government in Israel could possibly agree to a long-term ceasefire. not when these stories and so many others are known by the Israeli public. And I do want to commend Israel for having these brief humanitarian pauses, but a real ceasefire requires, at an absolute minimum, releasing the hostages. We now want to hear from Rita.
Thank you for having us here. My name is Rita Lipschitz. I am from Kibbutz Nir Oz. I don't have a picture because I have 76 family members that Hamas took to Gaza, and 25% of my kibbutz is or murdered or been taken to Gaza. And every day I feel their hearts. My heart is beating so hard every day, and my thoughts are with them every day. They came to us in the morning. We got a message. Me by myself, I left the kibbutz Friday evening at 7 o'clock. My granddaughter was with me in the kibbutz for 8 days. And in the morning, I got a message, you need to get into the bomb shelter rooms. And I'm in charge of a whole group of elder people while the missiles are coming. So I was checking them up, telling them what to do and not to do. They were so scared. They were hearing the voices around their houses. We have 4 neighbors who's on the line. And my neighbor, she was calling me, Rita, please help my sons. They are alone. And I told her, I am not there. Tell them to be quiet. While she was talking to them, 16 and a 14-year-old sons, Hamas took them. The youngest said, I'm too young, don't take me. And then my neighbor, she's a French lady who's married to a boy from the kibbutz that his father was murdered, and he was out fighting against 120 terrorists. And she was sending me, Rita, help, help. And I said, I'm not just be quiet, tell your son to be quiet, and you will be fine. You will live. They will not take you. She succeeded to live. I have another family that she was running to be the mayor of the area. I was helping her. They couldn't stand to be in the bomb shutting room because they put fire on the doors when they could not get into the bomb shutter room. They could not breathe. They have a son. The youngest one is 2. They have 3 children. They jumped out of the house and they got killed by Hamas. They took family to the youngest one, 10-month-old, and they were the first one that they took to Gaza. 2 children, mother and father. My grandparents, my son's grandparents, that are 85 and 83 years old, took to Gaza. Yochevet Lifshitz got back thanks to all your help from here. So we knew that they shot Grandpa's hand. He fainted by the kibbutz fence. They took Grandma. I am sure with all your help that Grandpa will come back. And every second, every minute, every hour, every 24 hours, we need just to think about this all the time. They are scared. I can feel their hearts beating all the time. We need to bring them back home now. Thank you so much.
As I think everybody here knows, but there are people out there, a kibbutz is not just a very small town. A kibbutz is a commune, and the 400 people in it were like a family, often at a kibbutz, eating together, sharing the productivity of their work. I want to thank Steve Rabinowitz for putting this all together. And I want to introduce Boaz, whose family members held hostage include a U.S. citizen.
Hello. So my name is Boaz Atzili. I live not far from here in Rockville, Maryland. But I was born at that area of Gaza envelope in another kibbutz, Kibbutz Zikim. Most of my family are still in that area or were in that area until 4 weeks ago. Now they're all displaced, refugees basically, scattered all around the country. They cannot go back to their places, which is like a war zone, still under Hamas rockets. We don't hear much about that. I want to tell you a little bit about my cousin and his wife. My cousin Aviv Atzili, he's 49-year-old. He's the son of my my father's brother. He looks quite a bit like me, though a bit more handsome. Aviv, and his wife, Liat Atzili Beinin. She's also a U.S. citizen. They are together for many years now. They're a lovely couple. They love to travel. They love to travel, especially with their kids. They have 3 kids that are young adults. They're really a peace-loving, generous family. I think like what maybe represents that is the dog that they adopted. They adopted a 3-legged special need dog, if you will, and gave her a really warm and loving family. And that dog was also killed by Hamas on October 7th, to just kind of demonstrate what kind of cruelty that is. We don't really know where they are. We know they're not at their home, which was burned to the ground. Rita told us about what happened in Kibbutz Nir Oz. It's the same kibbutz. But there were no bodies found, and Aviv's phone was later geolocated in Gaza, so that's the only indication that we have that they're there. They are, as I said, they are Israeli American family. They were here. I met them just last August. They were visiting, and I met them in New York. We had a really nice dinner with their kids and all our family. They have a family in Connecticut. They went to visit there. They have family in Oregon, and then they went to travel to Yellowstone because they got to see some nature if they're here in this beautiful place. So, I mean, what breaks my heart is especially their 3 kids, that they lost both of their parents in the same day. They don't know if they will ever see them again. They don't know if they will get to hug them again. And yeah, and I just want to say that these are, this is not a pro-Israel issue. This is not an anti-Palestinian issue. This is a human issue. And anybody that cares about human rights should care about that. And I don't want to talk about policy here, but I really ask that everything that could be done to bring them back home safe and as soon as possible, any price, anything. At least for me, it's worth it. And I really want to thank from my heart to the Biden administration and Congress and everybody who are doing so much effort in order to bring the hostages back home. And from the first minute, they were like in touch and trying to help the families. That's really, really appreciated. And thank you, Congressman.
Which of your relatives is a U.S. citizen?
Liat. And the 3 kids are also U.S. citizens. So thank you, and bring them back home.
Finally, let's hear from Yael.
Hi. I'm here to speak about my sister-in-law and her husband. I want to tell you, this is a story about love, the biggest love story you can ever imagine. These two met each other in high school. Rimon sings in a band. Yegev is a musician. Music brought them together. But they were foolish. It took them a few years to realize they belonged together. Finally, they got together, and 3 years ago they got married. They built a beautiful house in Kibbutz Nirim. They love people, they care for people, they love animals, they adopt wounded animals. They have 4 cats and 5 dogs. If they can, they would adopt more. Yegev fixes music instruments, brings music back to life, and Rimon is a healer. We actually really need her right now because Rimon's father was diagnosed with cancer 2 days ago, and we really need the healer in our family back right now. You know, these two people, they built a house in a kibbutz. It's a very peaceful community. It's where you go to live when you love agriculture, when you love crops, when you want to bring food and flowers into the world. And on our kibbutz, there's actually a warehouse where we store food that goes for the Palestinian people. When the terrorists came in on October 7th, they burned our houses, they burned our people, they burned the food for their own people. When people say this is a humanitarian crisis, this is a global crisis, I would like to emphasize there are more than 240 hostages. 138 of them have dual citizenship. They're coming from the US, from Thailand, from Argentina, France, Germany. This is a global humanitarian crisis that requires the global community to come together and release civilians that were captured in their home, in their pajamas, walking barefoot into Gaza. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Kathy Manning from North Carolina.
Thank you. I am Congresswoman Kathy Manning. I represent the 6th District of North Carolina. We all know what happened on October 7th when Hamas terrorists invaded Israel by land, by sea, by air, and their purpose that day in invading was to murder civilians and to capture civilians and to take them hostage. And the savagery and brutality that we know took place is really beyond anything that we can even comprehend. I have been meeting with hostage families for 2 weeks now, and sadly, it reminds me of when you talk to Holocaust survivors. Each Holocaust survivor has a unique, horrifying story. Each story is different. And as I've met with the hostage families and heard about their loved ones who are being held hostage, each story is unique, each story is horrifying, and each story is about someone who was loved and who was very special to their family. We know there are infants as young as 9 months old, and we know that there are elderly people, including Holocaust survivors. One of the stories that was particularly horrific to me was of a 35-year-old mother named Yarden and her daughter Geffen and her husband Alan, who were captured. They decided to jump off the truck they were thrown on to try to escape, and in making a choice that reminded me of what you heard about from Holocaust survivors, Yarden handed her 3-year-old daughter Geffen to her husband and said, "You can run faster, you go." And by sacrificing herself, she saved her 3-year-old daughter and her husband, and she has not been seen since then. Not only do we in Congress need to do everything we can to get the hostages back and to talk with everybody we can in the government, we need the terrorists to allow the International Red Cross to go in and confirm that these people are being held and confirm their condition. I myself will continue to do everything I can to raise this issue. I want to thank all of the families who are here today, because it has got to be excruciating to come to another country and tell your story over and over and over and relive the nightmare. But I think it's critically important with everything that's going on that we don't lose sight of the fact that these are human beings who are being held against their will, and they need to do everything they can to keep these stories alive. I'm going to end by just holding up this poster that was provided to me of the hostage, the people that we know are being held hostage. And if you look at these faces, babies, teenagers, middle-aged people, 2 people from my state of North Carolina, elderly. This is what these gruesome terrorists have done. And we demand that they allow the International Red Cross in so that we can determine who is there, what kind of shape they are in, and we will do everything we can to continue to push for their safe return to Israel and to their families' loving embrace. Thank you.
I expect that there may be another member or two who will join us. I want to thank Kathy Manning for her leadership on this issue, and let's open it up to questions either for members of Congress or more likely the families involved. Yes. Yes, and this is one of, I'm aware of 3 events involving the hostages. My colleague Jared Moskowitz did a roundtable that I believe was closed to the press. And of course, Republican House members did an event early this morning. So we in the House are certainly hearing about the hostages from their loved ones. And I'd like to have the families address your question.
So your question is how we're dealing with that, like. So we are on our life's mission to do whatever we can to bring them back home and as soon as possible. So we're speaking to whoever wants to listen, whoever has the power, and we believe that the U.S. congressmen and women have the power because the U.S. is a strong player in the international community, and like the U.S. Administration helped with the release of 2 hostages, we believe it is able to do it again with the other 241 who are still there. And it is difficult for us to do it, but we don't have a choice. We think of our loved ones who are held over there, probably in dark tunnels, probably not getting enough food, if any. And nothing we feel is even compared to what they feel. This is our obligation. And behind every person that you saw in the photo, it's not just one family member who's standing here. There's dozens of family members behind every picture on that poster. And I think, again, this is just our moral obligation to do so for our families, for everyone's families. There's some families who have been taken altogether, and they don't have any other family in Israel or around the world, so it's our obligation to speak on their behalf as well.
How we're doing? It's the most difficult question that I've been asked. You know, for the first 3 weeks, I did not know if my sister-in-law and her husbands were alive or dead. And this uncertainty, when you're trying to fall asleep at night and then the nightmares come and you don't know. She's a woman. What's happening to her? Is she separated from her husband? What's happening to him? What's happening to both of them? And then a few days ago, the Hamas released a video of 3 women. Rimon Kirscht, my sister-in-law, was one of them. And then in that video, we got the final confirmation that she was indeed kidnapped. So whenever we get a phone call from Israel, it's not to tell us that she is among the unidentified bodies. She's among those who were kidnapped. In that video, I saw a fragile, scared, very skinny sister-in-law. And one thing that I want you to notice, we're speaking about humanitarian aid. In this picture, where she's alive and well, and she has some, flesh in her bones, she's also wearing glasses. In the video that Hamas released, she was not wearing glasses. So for the past 31 days, she was not able to see. And I'm able to see all of you right now. If I take my glasses off, you're just a blur. And when we speak about humanitarian aid, this is humanitarian aid for people to be able to see. People with asthma need to be able to breathe. Babies need formula. People need heart medicine, and so many more. There's a list we passed to the Red Cross. It never got to them. The Red Cross does not see the hostages. And I want to tell you one other thing about how we are doing. More than 200,000 families were evacuated, are displaced. They do not have a home right now. They live in temporary shelters. And so my family is not together right now. My mother and father-in-law are in hospital treating the cancer of my father-in-law. My mother-in-law is alone in the hospital with her husband, and she's thinking about her children. She has 1 child in Gaza, 1 child that was evacuated to the Dead Sea and needs to take care of 3 babies, all under 3. So she's not able to be with her mother in hospital. And then another child here in the United States coming to speak with you all to ask for your help and plea that you bring our loved ones back.
Like I told you before, a kibbutz, all we are a big family. We are 300 left, and people are broken. They are thinking about their family members that are in Hamas, all the funerals that we are going through. The first 2 weeks, it was like a shock. You want to wake up from a terror movie. And then started all the funerals, and in Israel you sit Shiva for 7 days. And when we got into we are living in Eilat now, in a hotel. We go into the dining room, and before we go into the dining room, it's like there is a menu, but instead of a menu, there is pictures of our family members, where their funeral is, and who is going to that funeral, because we cannot go to all funerals because some of the funerals are in the same day. So I am a strong person. I'm strong for all the 300 people, which is 200 in Eilat and almost 100 in Gaza. I am staying strong for them, helping them, hugging them, and trying to find a way to get my 76 family members back. And we are a kibbutz that was one of the most beautiful kibbutzes in the area. We have a lot of feasts together, parties together, and we love to be together. And now we have this sadness, and we are all fighting for getting our family members back. Thank you.
Do we have another question? Yes.
So there's a lot of politics going around that. But like, I guess I want to say just that these are people, civilians, right? We heard about 9-year-old kid. They are not enemies of anybody. And this is what we have to remember. The suffer of these civilians doesn't negate anybody else's suffering. And regardless of the political and policy solution that will happen, these are innocent people that were taken from their home on purpose to a hostile land just across the border and put underground, and we don't know how they're treated. Well, we know of the few that we see that they are scared and thin and that. So, like, I want to believe that the people who tear these posters down, they are just ignorant and don't know what we're talking about. But these are human beings. And tearing down a poster of a child who's been abducted and is held hostage doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody. Just so.
I would just say those who are putting up the hostages, the posters, want these innocent hostages released. And those who are tearing down posters showing old, elderly people, Holocaust survivors, little babies and children, those who are tearing them down, don't want them released. Want them to be continue to suffer or be killed. Do we have any other questions? Folks, I want to thank you for coming, but I especially want to thank the families for being here. This is not the life you have chosen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It says, it's a dog tag like in the army, and it says in Hebrew, our heart, bring them home, but here it says our heart is captured in Gaza.